Now, the Small Business Development Department is up to the task of unlocking the potential of small and medium-sized enterprises in the country. Those were the words of Small Business Development Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams when delivering the department's budget vote in Cape Town in July this year. Now, the minister said the department would focus on 5 areas related to market access and localization, which have proven to be barriers for SMMEs. Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams joins us virtually now to reflect on her first 100 odd days as a part of the minister in the GNU, Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams. Thank you again, Minister, for joining us. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you so much, Leanne, and good morning to our viewers in their respective areas.
So we certainly can't say that it's your first 100 days in office, because it's an office that you've held for quite some time now. So since 2018, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to start right up front with a lot of comments that have come through where people are very frustrated with your ministry and feel that not enough is being done. And I think it's probably a good opportunity for you to perhaps tell us exactly what it is that you've implemented that people may be missing.
Thank you so much, Leanne. Let me just make one correction. I joined the portfolio in 2021 in August.
All right. Thank you for the correction. Thank you.
It's a long time indeed. I am 3 years. So unlike other new ministers, I'm not starting from scratch when I come to the portfolio. I'm building from what we have started. Now, the first thing, and for a department that is new as the Department of Small Business Development, which was set up in 2014, what I needed to do was to make sure that I amend the legislation to give the authority to the department. Because when I arrived, the portfolio committee had not passed any legislation that gives authority to the department. And this is why we have today the Small Enterprise Act that has just been signed by President Ramaphosa. Now, why is it important to put a legislation? There's lots of challenges that are faced by entrepreneurs that requires a department that is mandated to have, at times, authority to intervene and make certain determinations. Now, without a law that empowers you to do so, you cannot be able. At some point, you may recall that in 2021, before I arrived during the COVID period, my predecessor did issue directives in relation to how spaza shops must operate and other informal businesses. And this was successful because we were under the Disaster Management Act, because it was the period of COVID. You will recall that the now Premier of Mpumalanga, of Limpopo, who was MEC in Limpopo previously, tried to say, we are closing down spaza shops that are owned by foreigners. And the court ruled against her. I'm giving this background because these are things that are happening, basically, that people know of the challenges. And they would expect a department of small business to make those interventions. There are challenges when we're talking about lack of payment on time for entrepreneurs, certain unfair trade practices, but you cannot intervene if you do not have the law that protects and empowers you, which is why the first task I had to do was to make sure that we amend the Small Enterprise Act that was transferred from the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition to what it is today, which sets instruments that must respond to some of the challenges that are faced by entrepreneurs. It's just one. And the second one is the one that we are going for in terms of the business licensing. Who can therefore trade in South Africa in relation to the micro and small businesses that we have? And again, as I said, we are going to Cabinet at the end of November to bring the policy, including the Township Economic Development and Revitalization Plan, in order to reclaim and give authority, because we never imagined a situation whereby in the townships there could be influx of illegal foreigners that can do trade in our areas.
Okay, so Minister, I'm going to just, if I may interrupt you, I just want to quickly have a bit of a Q&A with you, because you've brought up so many issues, and then no doubt you'll bring up a lot more as we continue with the conversation. But I want to just reverse a little bit and go to spaza shops, because this is now immensely topical. In fact, you came under fire yesterday in Parliament as well, and you did speak to this and you did reply. But I just want to focus on that for a moment, and then we're going to move to the township economy. economy. I mean, a few months back, you said that your department had allocated 45 million rand to cushion local spaza shops and general dealers against competition from these foreign-owned shops and big businesses. Let's talk to this. How is the distribution of these funds done? And also, what is happening? It doesn't seem that there are enough measures in place to monitor these businesses after all of these incidences that we're seeing now.
Well, the first thing is I announced the program that we ran for spaza shops was in partnership with the wholesale and retail SETA, wherein we first provided training and registration of those spaza shops. So we called for applications, and we needed 1,000 spaza shops. As things stand, SETA has advised me that they have dispersed to more than 600 spaza shops and trained them. And the next intake will be that, how do we then put that support in terms of the stock now? Because as we're training, making sure that they're going to be compliant when they run the spaza shops, because it is important to ensure that they are compliant with all the other aspects, because they deliver to be brought on board, which is why we said, let's teach them the compliance first, so that they know as they get into the trade. So out of the 1,000 that we had committed to do, already the team told me that above 600 has already received the support. They are working on the next intake now.
Yeah,
but now you ask me, okay?
Sorry, Minister, carry on. I mean, obviously, I think what's on the top of people's minds is this increase in incidents of suspected food poisoning in black communities. I mean, this has really brought the issue of spaza shop regulation into the spotlight. So I think regulation is what we need to look at, and what your plans are to deal with all of these fake products, which in essence are destroying the local economy while exposing people to harmful products, in some instances killing children.
Thank you so much again, Leanne. So what we did as the department was to establish a township economy task force. Now, who makes part of that? You need the food manufacturers on board. You need the consumer protection on board. You need the Department of DTIC, the Department of Health, our department, Home Affairs and Police, and we have that in place. Because we were saying that the need to enforce compliance, which is why we also reached out to COGTA and SALGA, because right now the authority to license lies with the municipalities. We do recognize the weaknesses at local government, which is why you see the Minister of Health now getting into that space to say, although the National Health Act gives authority in terms of environmental health inspections to district municipalities, but you are aware that there are challenges. Therefore, the Department of Health is trying to step in. Those are functions of the Department of Health or the district municipalities, the department that must come on board in terms of enforcing those regulations, because you must get them from municipality. People must check that people are compliant in terms of the bylaws that enable trade at a local level. Then you get the Department of Employment and Labor to come in to check in terms of the labor wherein there are foreigners. What is the quota that we have in those businesses and in areas of work? And all of those members are doing the work that we are doing. But it goes back to the authority, because you can go far as coordinating, which is why earlier I mentioned that we are bringing to Cabinet the Township Economic Policy, which will therefore stipulate some of the things. We've engaged the Department of COGTA. They've issued the directives on how municipalities must set bylaws to enable this trade in terms of trying to regulate them. Because as things stand, as I said, they are the responsible authority.
Yeah.
They are going to finalize and gather the final process. The Department of Home Affairs, which looks into the entry and exit of people that are getting into South Africa, is the one that issues visas. Now, if you are going to enforce the legislation, you've got to know who has the right to trade if one is a non-South African. And the Immigration Act is very clear. Non-South Africans that can trade are those that would have obtained a business visa from the Department of Home Affairs. If you're on a study visa, a work permit, you do not have a right to trade. But now what has been lagging behind is the enforcement and inspection by the Department of Home Affairs, which again, we are happy because the department did explain to Cabinet that they are reinforcing and bringing more immigration enforcement officers to make sure that we enhance the capabilities of government to ensure that people are compliant.
All right. So I think, I mean, that is of utmost importance, and we can see that this is a joint problem that needs to be dealt with in many departments. But I want to bring up another issue as well, and I think the best way to bring it up is to also take a look at some of the comments that have come through from viewers. And this is one, and this is getting to the financing issue and the integration into economies, and this is so important. Sabali writing in and saying, rural women still don't have access to the markets. Stella, or Minister, couldn't open up the industry. Small business regulations don't align with small rural businesses. Those women in rural areas don't have skills, no funds for impactful training for women in rural communities. Otherwise, we would have sustainable businesses. Communal property associations need Stella, but nothing or nix. All I can remember is Stella saying she is no SASSA. How do you say that? Minister, how do you say that, and how do you respond to that?
All right, let me first clarify, because I do understand that there can be perceptions that can really be believed by people in some minds. It is not true that we're not funding rural women. Just in this 100 days in office, we've disbursed about 261 million rands to rural-owned businesses that are owned by women. That you can get those stats from CIFA. It is public information that quarterly, when we report to Parliament, we provide. Now, the question could be, Leanne, is that sufficient? Because I do understand at times when there's an outcry from entrepreneurs that are complaining about the access to financing. But people must take into consideration that this is the department that has a budget of 2.4 billion rands. So whatever that we are doing is within this 2.4 billion rands, which I understand, according to the challenge, is not sufficient. But again, in the context that the person that tweeted is quoting, when we explain to say CIFA and DFI does not offer grant, but offers blended financing, which means the component will be grant and the other component a loan, you have to bring it back. We do not give freebies or grants wherein you take state money on a loan capacity, knowing very well that is the and you don't bring it back. Then I made reference that we are not SASSA. SASSA does this, and I explained what SASSA does, which is why I was qualifying to say there's a difference when you come to us, like people will put proposals. Proposals will work in the Department of Social Development. But with us, you apply for a particular product. You apply, if you are applying for a loan, it is the loan, unless we are saying you apply for a non-financial support, which will be granted. And that was the context that is being referred to in this.
Okay. We
have disbursed money over the 10 years that we've been there. Between CIFA and NDF, we've disbursed more than 20 billion rands. And all of that is trying to bridge the gap. As I said, we do appreciate the challenges that are faced by entrepreneurs, but we are not folding arms to say there's a little budget. We're forging partnerships with certain entities. For example, we passed a policy that gives now us an authority to be able to establish a fund of funds. We're going to be announcing that fund together with Minister Paxton of DTIC, and the amount will be revealed when we launch, because we do DTIC and National Treasury. We are bringing in partners like UIF, partners like the African Development Bank, so that we can increase the pool, because we do understand that what we are providing is not sufficient, which is why I'm saying I do understand when the entrepreneurs complain, because we've got more than 2.5 million entrepreneurs. If now, when I come and report, I report about 100,000 that we have supported, it tells you that that is not sufficient.
But that
isn't. And what we have.
And I can see the frustration from people. There's a lot of frustration out there, because this is, this is the fuel of an economy, and we have such high youth unemployment. We really do. And the red tape associated is very difficult. And many people shouting out saying, we try and contact the department and nothing happens. Let's put another comment up just to give you an idea of what some of the viewers have been saying. This one is coming in from Tumelo, and he's talking, small businesses are struggling. Government is not paying invoices on time. As as a result, they closed down. She should be helping in this regard instead of talking about absolutely nothing and doing nothing. I can't point to a single thing she has done in assisting small businesses. Minister, I know these are scathing remarks that are coming your way, but I'm glad that we have you here so that you can perhaps defend the department in what you are doing, because it seems people are very frustrated with the department, that it's a department in name, but not in action.
Leanne, I just spoke to how much we have dispersed. And definitely, as I said, there will be those that are frustrated, but there are those, like if you go to our website, if you go to our social pages, people are talking for themselves. Yesterday, when Port West, we're doing the same thing of handing over to those that have passed in terms of the applications that they made. Today, we are in Gqeberha. Again, we're handing over support to entrepreneurs. But as I said, it cannot be true that I have not done anything, no matter how much one wants to strongly believe that. If I'm telling you about a legislation that now enables us to establish an office of the ombuds that must deal with the challenge that your caller is talking about in terms of the non-payment of entrepreneurs on time. Because as I said, you cannot act if you do not have authority. You are able to be doing the work that you are doing now and where you are, because you have a letter and a clear job description of what you do in law. And this is why I said we started by putting the basics first of putting the law that must enable us. These are frustrating challenges, I do understand, which is why we are putting legal instruments, whether you're talking about lack of access to finance, the red tapes that they are talking about, they are there, we know. I mean, like we've had them. That's why we're establishing structures, because red tape is not something that can be dealt by one department. It affects many departments. For example, in the studies that we've done and the work that we've been doing with the municipalities in terms of training them, giving them workshops to understand what are red tapes, how do they impact. We've identified 29 pieces of legislation that need to be either repealed or amended in order to remove the red tapes. And all those, when we do, we submit a report to cabinet, and then we advise our colleagues to act on those. That's trying to create a conducive environment. Because when you find people complaining about a red tape, most of the time it is policy-based or it is red tape-based. But what is not there, that I fully agree with them, is the stringent processes in relation to providing finance to small businesses, which is why through the funding policy again, we then said there's a need, because most of the financiers, they will say, bring a collateral, and they have a particular definition of collateral. Now we agreed in that policy that there's a need for us to establish a registry that must therefore be agreed upon by banking institutions and non-banking institutions that are providing financing, so that people can be able to borrow money against what they have. Not only to say, if you don't have a house, you can't have money. If I have a car and it's fully paid, why can't you give me money and then you use the car? All those things that now we are introducing, and we are partnering with the World Bank and National Treasury to develop that registry. It is meant to address these challenges. As I said, all things happen because there's no, well, if you are saying we are failing to enforce a particular law, I would accept, but we don't have the law that we must enforce. And these are the instruments that we are putting in place to address those.
Minister, we hope that the next time we speak to you, that a lot more of the frustrations have been levelled out, and we'll see a lot more action from your department in terms of this law that you've been telling us about, but also the Minister giving us some indication of what the department is doing and also replying to some of your queries about this. Minister, thank you for your time. I know there's so much more to talk about, but I'm glad that we managed to get quite important information out of you. The Minister, Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams, in charge of small business development, talking to us about her time, particularly within the 100 days in office, but since 2021 also being in charge of this ministry.